Aimo Koivunen, a ski trooper, and his squad were out on a ski patrol on a bitterly cold night. Despite having been on the trail for more than 3 days, a sizable Soviet army unit opened fire on them repeatedly. With the help of their skis, they managed to flee, running for their lives. But that's where things started to become interesting for the protagonist and hero of today's story. The Finnish were initially fighting for their territory, as opposed to the majority of other European nations that were engaged in World War II. In September of 1939, when Adolf Hitler attacked Poland, Britain and France warned that war would break out if Germany did not leave the Eastern European nation right away. Joseph Stalin took advantage of the geopolitical instability and he launched his own attack on Finland, accurately anticipating that the Western Allies would be preoccupied with dealing with Germany and unable to assist the Nordic country. The terrible winter war that would develop from the invasion. As events developed, the British and French discussed deploying an expeditionary force into Finland to assist them in defending against the Soviet invasion. German invasions of Norway and Denmark, which prevented the Allies from having a direct route into Finland, thwarted all attempts to do so. Finland was obliged to file for peace and relinquish a sizable portion of its territory to the Soviets after months of heroic combat against overwhelming odds and humiliating defeats for the Soviet Union. Finland made the decision to fight alongside the German forces when Germany began its grandiose Operation Barbarossa to destroy the Soviet Union a few months later. The people saw in the formidable Wehrmacht a means of avenging the atrocities of the Winter War and regaining their land from Stalin. But Finland resisted being fully captured by the German war machine and refused to ratify the Tripartite Pact. Instead, they ratified the Anti-Comintern Pact, a less formal accord. With it, Finland continued to be Germany's sole democratic partner in World War II, although the Finns never consented to Hitler using their army for his own ends. Stalin pleaded with Britain for assistance in brokering a peace agreement with Finland as Germany swept through the Soviet Union and Finland kept reclaiming its lands. Stalin was prepared to give up some of the territories they had taken if Finland stopped its hostile actions. But the Finnish government resisted and pressed on, angering the other Western allies and prompting Britain to declare war on them in December of 1941. After the failure at Stalingrad, Operation Barbarossa quickly lost its momentum, making Finland's expectations for conquering the Soviet Union and regaining its land back look increasingly remote. Nevertheless, the country persisted in backing Germany. The Red Army was getting ready to launch a significant attack against the Finnish by 1944, which had put them in a defensive posture. Franklin D. Roosevelt also urged Finland to sever its links with Nazi Germany. The war continued, but this time it was the turn of the Soviets to attack Finland and rush towards Berlin because Finnish President Risto Ryti had personally promised Hitler that Finland would not negotiate a peace treaty with Stalin while he was in office. The Finnish were now aware that their agreement with Germany was a bad one, but they were still obligated to fulfill it. The Finnish got an unending supply of German weaponry, medals, and even psychotropic combat-enhancing medications in return for their unflinching support. By steadily pushing the Germans back and forcibly compelling them to surrender all the lands that they had conquered by 1944, the Soviets won the upper hand in the conflict in the east. On April 20th, the countryside was completely blanketed in thick, new layers of snow. Aimo Koivunen and his tiny squad of Finnish ski troops were on their third day of patrolling the ice Arctic Circle in an effort to spot any potential Soviet intrusions. The lads were worn out, their bodies were wasted from the demanding ski patrol. In order to relax and recover, they entered a densely forested region in the icy Finnish tundra. However, just a few minutes after they had set up camp, they were startled by the menacing sound of rifle fire. The soldiers were alarmed, but they didn't want to rush into a trap, so they dispatched a few scouts to look into the noise's origin. Finnish troops were guided by Aimo Koivunen across untracked, thick snow cornered by Soviets well behind enemy lines. Koivunen's comrades relied on him to clear the track so the other soldiers could keep cross easily. Koivunen was rapidly worn out from the exhausting job, but then he recalled the tablets he had in his pocket. The team had been given a rash of Pervitin, a stimulant, back in Finland. Millions of soldiers received Pervitin from executives in the days preceding the Nazi invasion of France. Pervitin was created in 1938 by Temler Pharmaceuticals, a Berlin-based company. The drug firm claimed that the tablet, which was effectively an ingestible type of crystal meth, healed depression. Germans had access to the energy pills for a limited period of time. Then German's physician Otto Rank started testing Pervitin on university students. He advised testing Pervitin on university students. He advised feeding Pervitin to soldiers as the battle approached. The medicine provided the Nazis with an added advantage. Soldiers could unexpectedly have to march through the night without rest. The Nazis published a stimulant decree in the spring of 1940, eager to employ methamphetamine. 35 million meth dosages were distributed to the front lines per the directive. Amphetamines were also taken by the Allied soldiers to alleviate war exhaustion. Although at first Koivunen resisted taking the medication, The situation for his soldiers was dire. By luck, Koivunen had enough Provitin for the whole team. He struggled to swallow a single tablet as he continued to run from the Soviets while pushing through the snow. It was difficult for him to take a single dose of it because of the bulky mittens that were intended to keep him warm in those conditions. So Aimo Koivunen swallowed 30 tablets of pure methamphetamine without pausing to measure the appropriate dosage. He started skiing much more quickly, immediately. His team originally kept up with him, however, they were unable to match this new, invigorated tempo, and the Soviets were forced to retreat. Then Koivunen's eyesight became foggy and he passed out. He did not, however, stop skiing. He continued to slash through the snow, although it was pitch black. The soldier's consciousness came back the following day. He realized that he had traveled 100 kilometers and was likewise all by himself. On a meth high, Koivunen traveled 100 kilometers in the snow, and he was still drunk when he regained consciousness, or under the influence. He was by himself since his group had fallen behind. Now, Koivunen, who lacked food and ammunition, was not in a good position as a consequence. He was equipped with skis and a meth-induced energy rush. As a result, Koivunen continued to ski. He quickly discovered that the Soviets were still pursuing them. He saw Soviet forces many times along his lengthy journey. Additionally, he skied over a landmine. By coincidence, a fire was caused by the landmine explosion. Koivunen managed to survive both the fire and the blast. As the days went on, Koivunen's appetite gradually started to recover. This hunger had been subdued by the megadose of amphetamine, but gradually hunger pangs made the situation obvious. The soldier had few alternatives during the lappish winter. To avoid being hungry, he nibbled on pine blossoms. Koivunen once caught a Siberian jay and consumed it uncooked. Nevertheless, the landmine left Koivunen hurt and furious. He waited for assistance while he lay on the ground, fading in and out of consciousness. Koivunen would perish in the cold weather if he didn't act quickly. Under the circumstances, the Finnish soldier resumed skiing while fueled by meth and nothing but meth. Aimo Koivunen was the only soldier reported to have survived a meth overdose behind enemy lines, despite the fact that millions of doses of meth and speed were distributed during the conflict. Koivunen not only lived into his 70s, but also survived the conflict. The landmine he tripped on, his last challenge, tore a portion of his leg. He then spent a week in a ditch before pulling himself to safety. At the hospital, his weight was recorded at 94 pounds, and his heart rate was at 200 BPM. That's double the average. Despite the widespread use of Provitin by Germany and its allies and the numerous instances of overdose in the battlefield, Koivunen's tragic story was unique. The soldier eventually lived to witness his nation sign a peace treaty with Stalin and turn its weapons on Nazi Germany in a bold assault remembered as the Lapland War. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the possibility of confrontation with their major neighbor, Aimo Koivunen's name has once again become more well-known in Finland. Of course, Finland wants to leave its post-war neutrality and join NATO. The Finnish army of today, however, certainly isn't going to utilize meth. Aimo Koivunen, the Cray Finn, lived to a ripe old age of 71 before passing away in 1989. This meth-fueled survival story of the Finnish soldier symbolizes one of the strangest misadventures of World War II, but God is it a good story.